So a quick thank you to everybody for joining. This is our Future History Teachers Information Session. We've got a nice group here of students, about a half dozen students. And I'm also very, very grateful to our guests, to Mark Groen, to Hannah Knight, to Michelle Lorimer, and to Lauryn Wild for joining us. We've got a really wonderful brain trust, of which I am not a part. I am a very much a student in this, in terms of learning the best ways to prepare our students for work, especially teaching at the 7 to 12 level. We've got really wonderful crew here. So maybe we'll start in Zoom land with Lauryn and then Michelle and then to Hannah and Mark. Does that sound okay to everybody? Okay.
Yes.
All right, thanks. And Carmen, I'm going to ask you as a Palm Desert Campus History Club representative to give us that announcement one more time later, about the exciting things that the History Club is doing out at Palm Desert. So thanks everybody for joining us. I'm going to turn the floor over to Lauryn Wild, please.
Hi, I'm so excited to be here with everybody. As mentioned, my name is Lauryn Wild. I am the History, Social Studies, and Literacy Coordinator for San Bernardino County Superintendent of Schools. So currently, we support all 33 districts in the county of San Bernardino, which, if you didn't know already, is the largest geographical county in the United States. So we are extremely large. We have collections of large districts. My former district that I spent most of my career, San Bernardino City Unified, really close by. That's where I taught both ELA and history in middle school. So I was one of those individuals that had both my elementary and my secondary credential, which allowed me to teach multiple content areas. And so I spent time doing that before becoming a coach, an instructional coach, serving both middle and high school, working with history and literacy. But then I also spent some time after I worked at the district office supporting our middle and high schools, decided to take a little bit of a turn, and I became an elementary administrator in a tiny district in Riverside County, Romoland School District, and then came back to San Bernardino to be a principal, and then now I'm in the county. The other thing I should mention that I'm passionate about is that I had a chance to serve on the Instructional Quality Commission. Now, when I was a new educator, and actually, when I was into my career, I had never heard of the Instructional Quality Commission, but it is the body that serves the State Board of Education on all matters related to curriculum and instruction. And during that time, I got to work on many frameworks, including the latest history social science framework. So I was involved in reading all the public comment and helping respond to that, and really having these large-scale conversations about the future of history, social science, and where we can really go in the classroom. And I would say that I think the conversation, at least through my career, has shifted from history is not just about the translations of facts or information. It's really about developing critical thinkers in the classroom and really allowing students to become part of that literacy. And so it's moving from, I think, when I first started teaching, it was very, here's your scope, here's your sequence, here's the unit, this is the information. Cover was a big word. Now we're really shifting to, inquiry-based discussion and how we're developing critical questions, and that, we're aware that there's lots of sources of information. And so it's really about balance and investigation and understanding context, and really relying on developing thinkers and a fuller understanding of history. So today, I wish I could join you in person, but I'm actually here for the 3-day Ethnic Studies Institute hosted by LA County. And so today, I just was supercharged hearing all of the great work that's going on with integration of ethnic studies. So some of you may be interested in that, as that's becoming a graduation requirement in the near future. And it's really about how do we balance this conversation and understand our own personal story and what we bring to the classroom, but then elevating the voices of others. So I'm really excited to be here with this panel.
Thank you so much, Lauryn. That's a great introduction, and I love that we're already thinking in terms of teaching, administration, curriculum, and all these really, really big subjects. Thank you so much for joining us. Before we get into some of those topics, let's first just go around and everybody do it. Also an introduction. Some of you may know Professor Lorimer already from the classroom, but Michelle, please jump in.
Hi, I'm Michelle Lorimer. I'm an assistant professor at Cal State San Bernardino. I teach the pre-credential history core class, History 5700, that provides students with the CSET waiver. And I'm usually the person that students come to when they need to get approval for that or have questions about that process. So if you don't know me already, you should get to know me soon, probably in the next couple of semesters. I'm hoping to set up more of a early contact with students who are on the pre-credential track, just to help support you as you go along. So feel free to reach out to me. I'll put my contact information in the chat if you have questions while you're moving ahead. I work with a lot of different educational organizations and groups throughout the state on various projects, and I'm always happy to share that with students. So feel free to send me questions you have.
Thank you, Michelle. That's it's such an important role in terms of knowing really precisely what our students need to do. It's a lot of what we do with these sessions. We try to do one every semester, but whenever Professor Lorimer can join, I know we're going to cover our bases in terms of a lot of the things that you all really need to know precisely in terms of the specifics of the pre-credential track, the CSET waiver that may have caused some of you to prick up your ears a little bit, the CSET waiver, which we can talk about in a little bit more detail later. But before we do, let's go on to Hannah Knight. Thank you, Hannah, who's a BA and MA graduate of Cal State here.
Yeah, so I'm Hannah Knight. I went here, Cal State San Bernardino, for both my bachelor's and my master's, so been here for a long time. I think I was trying to do this in my brain, but I could not remember, but I believe I'm in my 8th year at Rialto High School. At Rialto High School, I teach AP World History. I also teach US History, and then I also teach Avid 11. And I've had that schedule for maybe the last 5 years or so, with a year off during my master's program. So, yeah, that's it. Brief introduction.
Great, and nice, because I'm the MA program coordinator, so I'm going to be talking about how much fun we have in the MA program. But also one thing is that we do try to accommodate people who are currently working with mostly evening classes for that MA program. All right, so we can talk about that separate, of course, from the credentials. And on that note, Professor Mark Groen from our College of Education, please say hi.
I'm Mark Groen. I'm from the College of Education. I'm a professor there. I got my bachelor's in history at Cal State Northridge and my master's in history at UCR before coming here. And I also coordinate the MA in Education program over in the College of Education. But because I happen to be sitting in the Department of History right now, I will suggest to you folks from history that you probably want to get your master's in your content area if you're going to teach high school. Whether it's history or economics or political science, it's better to get it in your content area, because you will find a high school student where some small portion of your curriculum lights their candle, and they're going to know more about it than you do. With the history, with the master's background, you've got a much better chance of creating a specialized short unit for that student that's going to keep them moving forward and occupy them while the other students are getting much more basic information. So
That's great.
I do endorse their history master's program. And you also might want to consider, if you haven't talked to Dr. Lorimer, talk to her about the A track, because it can get you the CSET waiver, which is huge when you're going into the teaching track.
Yes, and that is, we call that now the pre-credential track. But that's the, yeah, it used to be called, until very recently, it was track A. But that now we call it the pre-credential track. So some of our newer students might not have heard it called track A. So the pre-credential track, indeed, the pre-credential track plus. So I want to flag that also. Professor Lorimer knows what I mean by that. Plus a couple things. So the pre-credential track plus the 5700, I think, and we can check if there's one or two other things they need to do for that CSET waiver, and regular communication with your faculty, people like Professor Lorimer who are very familiar with that. So I'm Jeremy Murray. I teach in the history department. I am currently the coordinator of the MA program, the Master's in History program. And we've got another guest coming in just in time to introduce himself, actually. So I'm gonna immediately put you on the spot, Alexander, because I know you're ready. But we just went around the horn, and I was just about to open it up to questions. But some familiar faces for you, I'm sure. Hannah and Mark, you may know Professor Lorimer, and also joining us online in Zoom is Lauryn Wild from the San Bernardino County office as well. So really wonderful brain trust. I'm so glad, Alexander. Thank you for joining us. If you want to say a quick hello and a little bit of what you do.
Sure thing. Yeah, and thank you for that. I'm sorry for being late. As duty calls, I'm always, on the clock. So yeah, thank you. Yeah, so I am a history teacher at RUSD. I teach at a small school called Riverside STEM Academy. It's right behind UCR. We're a public, just like North High School in Arlington, everything in RUSD. I've been teaching for 9 years and a half there. It's my 10th year now. Yeah, I teach everything from AP US history, world history, AP government and econ. I teach extended day, which means I don't have a prep either. And so that's where I pretty much am at. I've been doing this thing with Jeremy for now, well, since its inception, I think. And yeah, happy to be here again. So thank you for allowing me to introduce myself. I appreciate it.
Put you right on the spot, right as you joined us. Thank you, Alexander. Perfect timing. And it's really wonderful. I'm very grateful to everybody for joining us. I think I might have right here this document that I've been. There it is. Yeah, this is the last thing I cut and pasted. That's the document. For anybody who wants to click through, I suggest you keep track of that. I will reshare that Google Doc. It's sort of a live document, and I put recordings like this one up there. You'll see them up at the top of that document when you click through. And the best and most up-to-date information that I can find on there. And if you see anything on there that may seem out of date, or if you have a question, follow up about that, you can let me know. I will probably then promptly ask one of our 5 wonderful guests or somebody else what the good information is to update it. But if there are things on there that you have questions about, please let us know. So that was pretty quick. We did our throat clearing in just 15 minutes here. So now we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 students in today. I don't want to put you too much on the spot, but I do want to hear from everybody about maybe questions that you hope to have answered. Hannah asked me in advance, hey, can you ask students to submit questions, and I sent that out with a publicity. I didn't get any back. But if you're in a noisy place and you want to put your question into the chat, you can do that. If you want to raise your hand, or we've got a pretty small group, so you can probably just go ahead and unmute. We can do that. And if we want to chat amongst ourselves, we can also continue to maybe answer some of the things that you might not know you should be asking about. So some of the things that may be changing, because this group is very, very active and very plugged into the things that are changing in terms of teacher preparation. The prompt I often ask my the guests who come into these events is, what do you wish you had known when you were sitting where you students are sitting? What do you wish you'd known that maybe would have helped you prepare a little bit? And you often get really, really rich discussions on that. Everything from classroom manner to things that you're finishing still while you're an undergraduate. We often, there are a few things like keeping your notes, keeping your books, because you say, oh, I wish I had that nice essay I wrote, or I wish I had that textbook. I wish I hadn't bought it for $50 and sold it for 75 cents. You know, that's a good sort of solid piece of information. Keeping your notes and keeping your materials really well organized. But I don't see anybody raising their hand, and I hope you feel free to jump into the conversation. Oh, while we're waiting, actually, Carmen, do you want to jump in one more time for our friends here and tell us about the Palm Desert Campus History Club and what you have going on there?
Hi, my name is Carmen Madrid. I am the coordinator for the History Club. We meet every Tuesday in IW in room 303 during Coyote Hour. This Friday, we have a field trip to the Air Museum in Palm Springs from 12 to 2. Lunch will be provided by the museum. There will be a tour of the museum and a tour of their archive department for anybody that would like to join. And I do have a question for the College of Education. So for the Palm Desert students who are doing a multiple subject teaching credential, can we possibly get a list of their current requirements? Because I know Mr. Karp has been trying to make connections with you guys, but no one's really answered what classes need to be taken if they're doing a multiple subject.
Multiple subjects, so that's different from the single subject history and social science, right? That's more for the K through 6?
That's K-6, yes.
And
the coordinator for that is Pete Smith, P-E-E-T, Smith.
E-E-T.
E-E-E-T, Smith.
Let me see if I can find his information.
We might be able to get her,
real time.
we might be able to get an email from her.
I'm going to put in the, come on in, Charles. What we're talking about, we're doing a future history teachers information session.
What does that mean in English?
That
Students
means
who want to become teachers.
students who
Why?
want to become teachers. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and share this here, okay? So Professor Groen said that this is your contact
Or elementary.
for multiple subject elementary K through 6 teaching, right?
Yes.
So go ahead and click through there. Carmen, did you see that one in the chat?
Yes.
Okay, so Professor Smith is going to be your main contact for that, which is, as you know, of course, that's different from preparing for teaching history at the 7 to 12 level.
Yes.
Great. All right. Good.
Pass that information.
Thanks, Carmen. Thanks for the question.
I think there was a question in the chat earlier.
Oh, God. Let me scroll up. Okay. What are some tips and tricks for finding sources for your lectures or lesson plans? Oh, that's a good one. Are textbooks from, what is that?
Your own schooling.
From your own schooling helpful in any way? Yeah, good one, Brooke. And I think everybody can see that one in the chat. So please, anybody who wants to jump in, and then we'll have another question from Alex Espinoza next. Brooke's question here first. Anybody who wants to jump in?
I mean, I guess I could start since I'm unmuted first.
Mhm.
But so what you're gonna kind of find is you're gonna pull lessons from all over. I mean, we like to say we borrow from each other, from different lesson plans. If you have a really great department, your department will have, at least in my case, a shared Google Drive. And You'll have lessons from other teachers that teach the same subject. Hopefully you're in a school that has really good collaboration. I fortunately am. I would say books that we have, they're good for your references, and you know, like Professor Groen was kind of mentioning earlier, like some of our students will love a little bit more information. But it's not often, sometimes you have to kind of work the kids up to that level. I mean, one of the things that you'll have to kind of work on, especially if they have you for the first time as a history teacher, I mean, we probably all know that history, you approach it a different way than saying like math and everything like that. So learning how to analyze sources, learning how to look at the speaker and like use that even like as clues into what you're learning in history are things that you have to teach very early on. So SHEG is a Stanford, what's it called? Stanford, Alexander, I don't know if you remember what this is. It's sheg.org is the website, but I can't remember what it's called completely.
Yeah, it's Stanford Historical Education Group. Yes.
Thank you.
No worries.
So that one's a really good source to get primary sources that are actually modified to really work with high school students. You can still use it with middle schools, but you'll probably need a little bit more supports there. That's one of the really nice ones to go to. Another thing that, I mean, in our day and age, what I would do is I would get on the Facebook groups. There's so many Facebook groups devoted to teaching different like grade levels. There's ones for US history, there's one for world history, AP world history. So if you can sign on with them, that's actually a huge like resource to use to get lesson ideas, to sometimes they complain, but you know, it's a really good resource.
Excellent, thanks. This is great, and thanks, Alex. Alex, you were quicker on that. There's the resource there. Michelle just noted that you need to go in about 5 minutes. So we'll come back to this, and we have a couple more questions in the chat. So please keep those questions coming in the chat. But because Professor Lorimer does need to go, do you want to talk a little bit about the requirements for the CSET waiver before you need to go, Michelle?
Yeah, sure. So to get the CSET waiver that we offer at Cal State San Bernardino, it's really called the coursework equivalent subject matter coursework equivalency program. And so there are 3 major things that you have to have in order to qualify for it to get into 5700. So the first thing is that students need to be pre-credential pre-credential concentration. If you came in under general, you'll have to change it to pre-credential so that your pause report reflects all the requirements that you need for pre-credential. You also need to have a minimum 2.85 GPA to show that you have competency in the subject areas. And along with that, you have to have grades of C's or better in your core history classes for the pre-credential track. So that includes your econ classes, your geography class, your political science course, and then your major history classes, 3050, 3060, all of the different subject area specific ones of like Latin American, African, all those different areas. If you have a C- in any of those courses, that doesn't count. They need to be like actual C's or better. And then those requests to join 5700 go straight to me. So you don't need to email Pam or Ryan or somebody else in the history department, Dr. Keating. You can just email me directly if you're interested in taking 5700. It's usually taken during the last or second to last term because we need to make sure that students meet all of these requirements and then they're on track to meeting those. And then before we finally give credit in the course, even if you've met all of the qualifications for course credit, if for some reason you end up failing your econ class, we still can't give you the waiver. You have to pass all of those major areas with a C or better. It's usually not a problem. Like that hasn't really come up too much. We've had students retake courses in the past. So if you have a C- in econ, we've had students at the same time retake those courses so they can get those grades up. So you can qualify for the CSET waiver. So just by the end of the term, I just make sure that all students meet those requirements again. And by earning credit in 5,700, that translates to the coursework competency equivalency. And our College of Education knows that, and they can just transfer it over as you apply for the credential program. If you decide to go to a different program outside of Cal State San Bernardino, the College of Education can provide you with a letter that shows that you've earned the coursework equivalency. There's an option on their website somewhere where you can request that letter. I think I see some things popping up in the chat. Okay, nothing for me. But if you have questions for me, let me know and I can help you work through those things.
That's great. No, I think that covers some really crucial things, Michelle. Thank you for that. And I think that will be of interest to some of our students, the CSET waiver. Are there any questions? Because I know Michelle's going to need to go on this narrow point. And you can also follow up with me. You can follow up with, well, if you follow up with me, I will promptly direct you to Professor Lorimer, because she's the expert on this. But this is, yeah, this is a relatively new thing that we have. We didn't have it in place when Alexander and Hannah were coming through. It's a new thing that we folded that together with our quarter to semester process, and it's online. It's working now. Online in the sense that it's working, not in the sense that it's on Zoom. But our CSET waiver is working. So thank you, Michelle. If whenever you need to go, thank you so much for that crucial aspect of what I think a lot of students will be interested in. And to all the students, I think, don't worry, this is a little bit complicated. It feels a little bit sort of inside baseball and some of this stuff. We will be here to answer your questions as they come up. The big takeaway from Professor Lorimer there was ace your classes, and take the pre-credential track, and you're more or less there with a couple extras to add on there. So thanks for that, Michelle. We do have a few questions coming in, so let's go back up here and see if we can. We talked about the getting ideas, and we'll come back to that. I think some finding sources for lesson plans. That's a good one, and Hannah had some excellent points about that. Alex Espinosa said, I thought I heard you say earlier that it might be better to get a master's in your area of study if you're going to teach. Could you explain a little bit more about that, please? And getting a master's in education administration is a good way to go as well, but I'm not sure what the best way to go about it would be. Yeah, I think for administration, and we heard a little bit from Lauryn about the administrative side of things, but I think it's clear, Alex Espinosa, that teaching, if you're interested in teaching at the 7 to 12 level, then a master's in your content area is what the best thing is. Now, Lauryn can maybe talk a little bit about a master's in education, and how that might serve you on the path of administration, but that would be, I think, a little bit different. Did you want to jump in on that a little bit, Lauryn, because you have a sense of the administrative side of things?
Yes, and actually, so my route was, I didn't get my master's right away because, like many of the conversation here, I wasn't sure if I was going to go content specific, if I was just to do general instruction. But then I did realize that administration was going to be a good fit for me. So I actually got my master's in administration from Cal State San Bernardino and went through their admin program. At that time, I started it when I was an instructional coach. So it was a good fit for me to go full time. I also, I just put another link to the site that should be a good link. I realized it wasn't shared with everyone. So I wanted to add that I gave in the chat a link to a Google site that I've actually been working with Eisenhower High School, which I know is a sister high school in Rialto, with their history department, specifically on disciplinary literacy, but through the lens of history. And so on the history page, There's a big list of links to primary sources, many of them that are mentioned. I think the Stanford and the Library of Congress and a lot of those are repetitive. But I think in terms of the credential, it's really just understanding all of the pathways in education, matching that with your passion and where you really find your heart. I know that content is great for people that really see themselves as content experts and wanting to pursue that area. You know, if you're interested in administration, that's a good segue. And I know a lot of folks do that, but then some also want to just do a general instruction. But I would agree that if you're going to stay with content, I would recommend a content specific master's.
So the master's in history. That okay. Thank
Especially
you
for secondary.
What's that?
I said, especially for secondary. And I think,
Oh yeah, yeah.
I think those that tend to do the general instruction, and again, don't quote me on this, but I think it's heavily elementary because that is a natural pathway from the elementary credential. And so I find secondary folks that I work with tend to get more out of master's, either in administration, if they're going to head that way, or in their content area. But again, that's just my personal opinion and analysis.
That's and there are different views on this, which is important, but really great to have these expert views, and that makes a lot of sense, Laura. I know, Mark, you're going to need to go in a few minutes.
I've got class in a few minutes.
In a
Yes.
few minutes. So this one from Crystal is perfect for you. A quick breakdown of the credentialing process and some general information regarding the CSAT. So perfect student comes through the credential process. What does that look like?
Basically, they're going to get their bachelor's in a content area. If it's social studies, it can be history, geography, political science, economics. We're credentialing you in all of those areas. And if you've gone through the CSAT prep program, you will be able to waive the CSAT. If you did not, you will have to take the CSAT prior to entry into the program. Then once you enter the program, if you're on the A track, the Express I Have No Life track, you will get through in 1 year. We also have a B track that is a little slower. Once you've completed your credential, then you can seek a job. We also offer a master's in education, which is got two options. It's got an elementary option and it's got a secondary option. So we can help the secondary folks focus on secondary level. And if you go that route, we allow you to use 4 of the classes from your credential program toward your master's. So you only need 21 units to get your master's degree.
All right, excellent. And so the single subject, which I will put in the chat right now, of our CSUSB version of that, that's your single subject credentials. And then Professor Groen also just mentioned a Master of Arts in Education. So we've been talking about that a little bit as well. So that does that help a little bit, Crystal? Give you a little bit of a sense of how the program works. If you click through that first link, you'll see how to access the application. Did you have any other specific questions about how the credentialing process works?
No, that answers everything. Thank you so much.
That's great, and thanks, Mark. That's if you need to
I'm
go.
good for a few more minutes.
Okay, excellent. I know we have a few more questions coming in. Oh, we have another expert joining us, James Martin. Thank you so much, James, for coming in. Another BA graduate of Cal State, and I think you got your credentials here as well. Is that right, James?
I did my credentials actually at UC Riverside.
At UC Riverside. And can you introduce yourself quickly? Tell us a little bit about what you're up to right now.
Yeah, of course. Again, I'm James Martin. I got my bachelor's in history from CSUSB in 2020, and I received my credentials from UC Riverside in 2021. I'm currently a 10th grade world history and 9th grade avid teacher in the Coachella Valley. I teach really close to the Palm Desert campus. That's what I've been up to for the last 3 years, just teaching and trying to master my craft.
Thanks, James. It's so cool for me because James and Alexander and Hannah come back and I get to hang out with you guys again and hear what you're up to. Let me scroll up here and try to get us caught up a little bit. There's some good recommendations from Professor Lorimer here for everybody to scroll through. They won't show up for James, I think, because he joined a little late, but we've got a few things in the chat to get through. And good recommendations there. Groups on Reddit, Stephanie asked. I think I assume there's groups on Reddit for everything. I am social media averse, if not allergic. But I realize they have potential. And I'm not sure, Alexander or James or Hannah, if you've found networking groups, whether it's Reddit or some other format.
Alexander was going to.
Sorry.
Oh, sure, I can speak to that. Yeah, so yeah, I totally understand, Jeremy, about the being averse to social media. But sometimes it could be good. On Instagram, there are a lot of great teachers that post a lot of their sources and materials, some of them with a comedic effect, but other ones with more serious stuff. And there are also some organizations that have their Instagram pages that link to their websites, like Edutopia is a big one. They talk a lot about education, like what's going on in politics right now, especially with education. But they also have really great resources for teachers, like how to better do classroom management, how to change to a universal design learning model, talk about PBL, which is really popular among a lot of different subjects as well too, which is project-based learning. So yeah, there's a lot of anything on social media, you'll find something, whether it's on TikTok or Instagram. There's going to be a teacher, there's going to be a link to something, and there's going to be other websites that they go to. So while some of it is all fun and just like for laughs, some of it can be really good for you to find links to really helpful resources.
Those are really good things. PBL, project-based learning, and UDL, universal design for learning. Those two things can really crack open the way that you think about what you're doing in a really profound way. So Alexander, some great ideas there. Anybody else want to jump in on this one?
I mean, I think the biggest thing is that a lot of this is going to come from you actually being in the classroom. You'll kind of figure out what works for you, what doesn't work for you. You'll kind of find out your strengths as a teacher. So for example, I like using like Socratic seminars. So Socratic seminars it's a lot of prep work. It's mostly kind of student driven. So it gives them the materials. In fact, I just did it with my AP World class about, how land-based empires use methods of control as they expanded. And for some teachers, it's harder for them. So really, I think the biggest recommendation is just try a lot of different things. You'll find what works, what doesn't work. Don't get discouraged if it doesn't work, because that's kind of a part of learning. Like we tell our students, it's all about just trying and figuring out. So, and don't hesitate to kind of like get rid of the project if it's not working for you. So, but yeah, I think that's the biggest thing I learned.
That's really good. I find that also, I thought when I was coming into, first when I started college 30 years ago, and when I started teaching, in both those situations, I thought I'm going to have to come through the door knowing everything I need to know, and everything's going to be perfect and packaged and ready to go. I remember going to college thinking I had to learn shorthand so that I could write every word that the professor said. And I actually tried to learn shorthand, and it didn't take, but that sort of thing, that sort of learn as you go, as long as you're there, as long as you're showing up for that learning process, that's a huge part of what you need. Alexander, jump in.
Yeah, thank you. So yeah, I was gonna just say I like what Hannah just said, like do what works for you. And a lot, like she said, everything you're gonna learn is gonna come from what you do in the classroom. What I found is that and it kind of goes along to the question of what I wish I'd known. We have this impression, I think, when we are doing our credentialing and that we're gonna get in the classroom, that we have to be kind of like sage on the stage. At least that's what I used to think. Maybe I'm alone on that, but I used to think like that a lot. But my first year, second year in, I quickly realized that if I'm doing the talking, they're not learning. If they're talking, they're learning. So the more they are doing what you need them to do, the more likely that they are actually going to be learning. So yeah, whatever models you choose to use, whether you're going to use Socratic seminars, whether you do something as simple as like think, pair, shares, or station activities, agree, disagree, debate type things, or the four corners of your room. again, the more that you can get them to talk about things, the more that you can get them to engage with the questions that you have for them, the more likely you'll have success with them, not only learning for your standard, your assessment, but lifelong as well. They'll remember a cool little debate you had in class more than your lecture on, I don't know, Athenian democracy or anything like that. And just one more thing to plug too. One thing that I'm trying this year, and this is not, by the way, endorsing that you buy the book or anything, but I'm putting it in the, I'm putting it in the chat. This is a thematic based way of teaching history. I teach world history, and this is the second year I'm trying this. So I'm trying to teach world history with essential questions as opposed to teaching it chronologically with the intention of trying to show students or to help them learn how, you can answer these big questions about history throughout time by looking at little surveys of history and seeing how each of these people, civilizations, or just states would have answered this question, and then we move on to another unit and do something of a different question, and also and do the same process but now with different parts of history. And so it's pretty scary to do something like this, I have to say, because it requires a lot of unlearning about the way that I think I've always learned history and what I've learned with Jeremy's classes and other professors and even just teachers throughout high school. But don't be afraid to think outside the box. And if you have a great administration that will support you for these like crazy ideas, then I say go for it, because it now is the time to, I guess, challenge some things that we've always done, because we have to find ways to keep kids engaged and to make learning a little bit more meaningful for them, which is a big challenge. And so yeah, sorry I talked too much.
No, that connected really well with what Lauryn said just before you joined, Alexander, about a kind of cracking open of the curriculum, making it less the sort of the banking model of Paulo Freire, sort of pouring information into the heads of your students, and more the problem-based learning, and the sort of igniting inquiry and that kind of thing. So I think that's exciting to think of that as a sort of new general trend. There are a lot of great resources that Professor Lorimer and Lauryn and Alexander have shared. So if you guys all can scroll up there. But James, did you want to jump in with any thoughts?
Yeah, I think also a good point is when you start teaching, I know you learn a lot of it on the job because every class is different, every school year is different. Also finding your people on campus. Every school will have different people who are experts in different areas. And at the beginning of our school year, we did a lot of training this year on PLCs, so professional learning communities, and how we can rely on each other, because everyone, again, is an expert in a different field. So we have an instructional coach on my campus who is amazing. So finding out what people you can reach out to for new ideas, and going back to that idea of not being hard on yourself if something doesn't work. I work with this teacher. She's an amazing French teacher, and she said that we have to learn how to separate self from strategy, because sometimes the strategy doesn't work out, and we have to remember that it's not a reflection of us. It's just a reflection of maybe we need to try something else, or something different might work. And I also use Socratic seminars, and there are such great ways of getting kids to engage historically. All these different activities. I also coordinate the AVID program on my campus, so I'm always looking at ways for kids to engage differently, how to get other teachers to encourage students to engage with their work in different modes. But again, just finding your people and learning from everybody else's experiences, because that is very invaluable to know what everyone else, or to try to know what everyone else knows.
Thanks, James. That's really excellent. You gotta go. Thank you so much for joining, Mark. I'll follow up with some questions. Okay. That's really great, James. Separate the self from the strategy. Wow, that's a good one to meditate on. I like that. Really useful. And some more great resources here from Alexander in the chat, and also from Lauryn. Lauryn, did you want to jump in with some thoughts?
I mean, I was just going to piggyback and snap on what they said. I think it's really about engagement. And I think the piece that I found helpful, especially with multiple preps, is if you can have some of those high engagement activities, you can plug them into different content, and that will make it so much easier and streamlined. One of the things that I really had to learn as a teacher was pacing, especially in secondary, when you get to that like 40 45, 50-minute class. You're really trying to do bell to bell. You have so much that you're excited to really get into a lesson. Is I always thought about teacher action, student action. So I would actually have a student in my class keep the ratio of how many minutes I spoke versus how many minutes my students would speak to each other, because I really had to learn to kind of censor myself a little bit and to be quiet, because as mentioned, when you're experiencing and you're part of that conversation, you're going to learn so much more. The other thing that was a struggle for me is I really had to be okay with what we call productive struggle. When you ask a question, you want to jump in and save, like, you want the right answer right away. You want that affirmation, but you really have to be comfortable with letting students productively struggle and learn. And so it's that balance, and it takes a while to understand the balance between giving them things that are too easy, but things that are too hard. You want that middle balance where they can really apply critical thinking and they can delve into deeper thinking. Some of the 2 resources I put in the chat, Edu Protocols for History Social Studies is excellent. The author, one of the co-authors, is actually a teacher out in LA County. He works with our county office a lot. He's in the classroom, super accessible. And then the other one is a big conversation right now is using gamification in history. And this is the idea of creating simulations, of having students be part of an historical experience. So I did put a website that gives a lot of different examples of what a history simulation could look like, but it's really, again, we've said project-based learning. It's all about hands-on and having students experience learning and have them build those deeper connections.
Thanks, Lauren. That's really some excellent notes here. We've got a good 10, 15 minutes left in the hour. So I don't want to rush to wrap anything up, because I know our students are probably soaking this all in. This is really, really great insights. I feel like we should also have a group of working teachers. And I'm sure you all already have activities like this where you get together and you exchange ideas, but a lot of this is sort of once you're in the classroom, right? So I want to wind it back just a little bit, but that said, I also want to have another forum like this where we bring all the teachers and talk about classroom strategy and that kind of thing. But just for our students now who are in and who are undergraduates, who are excited about possibly becoming teachers at the 7 to 12 level. In terms of the from where they are now to when they first walk in the door into their own classroom to teach, are there any things that you think they should really be aware of? Or I know some of these things have come up in these past events about working with a master teacher or doing your the process of the credentials itself. Is there anything that sort of jumps to mind that you think, oh, I wish when I was an undergrad somebody had reminded me to do that? I mean, the only thing I can think of is saving my notes and saving my books, which I sometimes ritually burned at the end of a particularly difficult semester. I don't recommend that. I actually had a wood stove in my house at the time, so it wasn't ritual as much as maybe necessity. But are there any things that you would say sort of, make sure you do this, or make sure you, go to office hours, those kind of things that you might suggest to current undergrads?
I mean, I think, so definitely going to office hours. I mean, obviously this is kind of how a lot of us that are here presenting, because we've stayed in touch. But I think when it comes to walking into your own classroom the first time, and as many of you kind of get into a credentialing program, you don't really have a lot of times control where you're going to be placed for your master teacher, because again, at least what happens our district is they're kind of reached out to the teachers and they say, we have students, would you like to take on a student teacher? So you don't have a lot of control there, but I think what's kind of important is to know the culture of the school. I teach in a very like high percentage of like Latino community. So, if you don't grow up around that environment, for you yourself, it's a culture shock. You don't, you know, there's, you kind of, they have different like traditions and everything like that sometimes comes into, you know, how they look at school and everything like that. So it's kind of understanding where they're coming from, because it definitely influences what happens in the classroom. So that's definitely something I would definitely recommend. And then also one thing, and this is kind of what I learned in the interview. I don't know if Alexander or James found this out too, or Lauren. One of the things sometimes principals will ask you when you are interviewing for the position is, what do you know about their school? If you've actually put in the effort to find out what is the breakdown of their community. And obviously, if you don't know, it's going to kind of send a message to them and they won't call you back. So it's definitely something I have learned is valuable.
That's a really good point for, I think, all students who are going out into any profession or applying to any grad program. This simple little idea of fit when you're going on the job market, when you're applying for grad school, when you're interviewing for a new position. Make sure that you can convey that. That's a really good bit of career advice in almost any world, and that takes a little bit of recon, a little bit of preliminary research. That idea of showing and explaining clearly to the person you're talking to why you're a good fit. So we all focus on excellence and doing our absolute best as students in every way, but also it's important that we have that other added element. So that's a really important note. Why, you know, what do you know about this place that you're going, that you're interviewing for? Really good point.
Like Alexander said.
Yeah.
Yeah, so to add, I literally love what Hannah said. Like, really learning a lot about the culture of the school is really important, and that will be asked at the interview. I was asked that when I went to STEM, and again, just in my case, trying to sell yourself as a history major in a STEM school, you're like, why do we do this, and why are we, you know, teaching at a STEM school, right? So definitely learn about the culture. Another thing that I wish I had known or probably done more, but I also did do when I was at Cal San Bernardino was try to find a high school that you could actually get involved with before you actually go to your credential program. If you could find a tutoring position, a volunteer position, or in the case where we had at Cal State San Bernardino, I'm not sure if it's still active, Jeremy, but Upward Bound is a Cal State San Bernardino program where they help the students about I don't know how many students in high school in San Bernardino, that connects them to students at the university through tutoring and other things like that too. The reason I say this is because it's not going to be a surprise, but you should definitely ask yourself the question, if you want to be a teacher, can I be in a room with teenagers all day for 8 hours, not often talking to an adult, and being okay with that, saying that, hey, I'm going to be with a bunch of kids all day. And many of them come with different kinds of, you know, like moods, attitudes, packages of what they're coming in every day with what it is. Are you ready to deal with that for 8 hours a day, sometimes more, and for 5 days a week, and for, you know, 180 to 85 days, however many years we teach out of the year? Because if knowing that you can handle that sort of thing already puts you, I think, in a really good position to being able to empathize with them, remembering that, you know, you were their age at one point, that they struggle too, and their reality is very different compared to what maybe yours was when you were in high school as well. So yeah, try to get involved in as much as you can with a high school beforehand, if it's your own as well too. Like, go back to your schools, go back to your middle and high schools to see if they could use any help, and that actually does really well for you when you are applying for jobs, because showing that you have some connection to the district will show that you are deeply interested in also being there, and they love to have of their own. I'm a product of Riverside Unified School District, and I was blessed enough to get a job in the very district that, you know, helped me get through my primary and secondary education. So it feels good. It feels like you also can give back too. So yeah, get to know the culture, like Hannah says, and to get involved. Try to find a way to make your way to those, whether it's through your own home schools or through the a specific place that you want to be in, so that you can see, like, can you do this? Can you be in a room with all these wonderful kids, and some of them that might try and test you, but I mean, again, can you be with them, you know, for that long and say, yeah, I'm good, I can do this. It can be good some days, really rough some days, but I can handle it. So yeah, that's my suggestion.
And I'll just piggyback on that really quick. This was actually a strategy that I did, was in my undergraduate, and when I was going through my credential, every opportunity that there was a project where I could get information from an expert, I actually went to the school districts I was interested in teaching and even the schools and asked to make an appointment with that principal and interview them on what my project was. And what I was doing is I was really interviewing the school culture before I decided to apply. And I knew which schools I was interested in putting my application, or in my case, I interviewed at the district level and said, these are the schools I'm interested in. And I think that's really important, because if there's a mismatch with administration, with culture, there can be, unfortunately, some toxic combinations out there that can make it triple, quadruple more difficult as a first-year teacher. And I know from coaching teachers in those situations, it's really hard, because once you get hired, you are looking at least a 2-year commitment to get tenured. And, it's a while before you're eligible for transfer. So that first initial fit is important. You guys are very fortunate because we're in an era of teacher shortages. And so you have to think of it that you actually have the upper hand in the situation. They're going to, need you. And I know that hasn't historically been even something for history. Usually history is a little bit typically more difficult to get filled, but I would say right now there's, opportunities for everyone. And that's really important to, like you're saying, be involved, find those connections. And I would say, when I was interviewing potential teachers, I really wanted to know their why. I wanted to know what they felt about kids, because as was mentioned, that's who your primary audience is. And then I also wanted to know that they were coachable. I never expected teachers to know everything. You cannot possibly know anything. But if you know how to be coached, if you know how to grow, if I would much assume take a teacher that knew a lot less, but was very open. And I felt like I could really work with them and mentor them. And it was a partnership, as opposed to someone who really thought, oh, I'm an expert in this, I don't need to take any advice. Those were, situations where I was like, I really gave pause before I would hire someone if I didn't feel like that they wanted to be a team player.
Thanks, Lauren and Alexander. James, jump in, please.
Yeah, and just to kind of go off of Lauren and Alexander, it is just so important, like Lauren said, to be coachable in your first few years, because again, you have those 2 years of induction that you're going through, and you're still, kind of meeting your school. And like what Alexander had said, so for me, right after I graduated high school, I actually went back to my high school and worked there for 4 years while I was in college as a tutor. And then I worked for that district doing a few different things. And then afterwards, I did my student teaching out in Moreno Valley. When I was at Cal State San Bernardino, I was in SI, supplemental instruction. And when I was doing that, it gave me these little pockets of experience, working with kids or working with college students. SI made me feel like I was teaching mini classes. Tutoring, I was working with high school students. So finding any place where you can get that experience in education beforehand, I feel like really made me a lot more confident in my first year, because there's a lot of unexpected things in your first year, because you never know what it's going to be like. But I had a little bit of experience working with people already, or working with students, that really helped me out a lot. So any experience you guys can get with that is great. Any local school districts, they have a lot of after school programs, like you brought up, Upward Bound. There's CAPS. There's a lot of different things after school where you can just volunteer to work with kids to make sure that that's really, what you want to do and what you want to commit to. Because, the kids, they look up to you and they need you more than you think they do. But it's a really great experience when you get to be in there and learn all of the tips and tricks.
So just to piggyback on what James just said, because I don't know if anyone caught it. He mentioned induction, which is not often referred to. I think we're kind of shocked by it when we first come in. So if you've never heard of induction, you might have also heard it called as BITSA too. That's at least what it was called when I was first hired. BITSA induction is the first 2 years that you're hired with the district. And in a sense, it is kind of a repeat of the credentialing program. You have a coach or instructor come out and they observe you, you're teaching, you submit lesson plans, and you have to fill out at least in my case, I don't know if it's a little bit different, but a massive form that what the induction does is it clears your credential. Because when you get your credential, you start off with a preliminary credential. And you have to go through induction and BITSA, and I believe you have 5 years to clear it, if I'm remembering correctly. But it's not it's not permanent, or it's not, I'm not really sure like right way to phrase it, but you have to go through this program in order to get it, like you're good. You no longer have to kind of go through training for it. And then every 5 years you just renew your credential. You pay, I don't know, $80-something. I don't know, I just did it again. So but yeah, that's what induction is. That's like your first 2 years of teaching. So kind of one thing to, it's really great to get involved in your school. I know I'm going a little bit past 5. It's really great to get involved in your school, but also don't feel like you have to take on everything, because those first 2 years, it's a lot. You're learning how to lesson plan, you're getting used to actually being in charge in the classroom and no backup with a master teacher, and you're also going through induction. So if you haven't started your master's yet, I mean, if you wanted to, great, awesome. If you're that person, I actually waited to do my master's to do it, and it worked for me because I could slightly breathe and not go insane with it, but it's just kind of something to consider. So
Yeah, that's, we are at 5 o'clock, so we can move toward wrapping up, but that's an excellent point. And I think getting up, you can join us.
sorry.
We're talking about this future history teachers information panel. We're just wrapping up. But this process, and maybe we can line it up on that Google Doc that I've started to work, sort of what it goes from
Timeline.
Yeah, BA to credentials to the student teaching, and then to the job market, getting hired, and then induction or BITSA, and then full teaching and clearing your credentials. So that everybody here gets a sense of what to expect a little bit in terms of that process. But these are really big ideas, Alexander, and then Lauren and James and Hannah have mentioned teaching students, not always teaching content, not always coming in masterful on exactly what you want to tell them this day. Here it is, I'm going to deposit this information into your brain. And then, of course, everything goes sideways, but maybe something else happens. Some really exciting other things happen in the classroom. My brother's finding this out right now. He's teaching, I think, in his first year back in New York in 7th grade or 8th grade history. So I think we've covered a lot, some very systematically and then others very sort of qualitatively here as well. And I want to thank everybody. I want to thank Lauren and James, Alexander and Hannah, also Michelle and Mark, who had to hit the road a little bit early. Are there any parting thoughts from our guests? We have just one more question. Oh, a point from Alexander. One more suggestion: when you've gotten enough experience, take on a student teacher. It will help you grow personally. You'll be mentoring the next group of teachers. I've heard somebody say you never really learn this stuff until you have to teach it. And then suddenly you see it from a different perspective. But I assume teacher training is also something like that, where you kind of make an object of your own process and understand it more deeply in that way. I know Alexander, James, and Hannah very well as students. Lauren, I thank you so much for taking the time to join us. It's been such an invaluable perspective to have you join us. Did you have any parting thoughts for our students?
No, well, I would just say it is really about relationships. And I think what you said, you want to prioritize students over content, because my parting advice would be, we don't learn from people we don't like. And so, that you have to find ways to make connections. That doesn't mean you will love every single one of your students, and that's okay, but it is your job to make those connections and to create a climate where everybody feels seen and valued.
Thank you, Lauren. That's excellent. Alexander, are you going to jump in?
Just one quick thing. I know we're done on time, but yeah, I just wanted to remind you, as hard as it is, because it's what Lauren said, like you won't love all your students, and but you have to try to make those connections. It's hard to remember this, but it's not until you have that parent-teacher conference that you're like, I'm speaking to someone's daughter, someone's son, someone's grandkid, someone's adopted kid. It really gets to personal. So I know it's hard, and you will struggle with this, because that's what the nature of this is. You have like 30 some kids in every class. You're teaching 5-6 periods. You're going to have a lot of students, but it is someone's child that you are entrusted with trying to help and take care of. And so it's difficult as a maid to remember. Sometimes you have to remember that you're helping human beings. Yeah.
Thanks, Alexander. James, any parting thoughts?
Yeah, I tell my students when my students ask me, why you became a teacher, or, why you teach, I tell them it's one of the hardest jobs in the world, but I think it's the best job in the world. I had a fabulous mentor when I was doing my credential program, and he told us, parents are sending you their most prized possession every day, and it's our job to, really craft these people who are going to be the future leaders and believe in themselves. And I tell my kids every day when they leave my class to go and change the world, and that is, what they do. And like I said, one of the hardest jobs, but it's best job ever.
Excellent, James. Hannah, any parting thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of times you'll hear students say history is not my favorite subject. Unfortunately, we have that subject that a lot of students don't love. But you'll probably hear more that I don't like history, but I'm glad you're my teacher because of those relationships, because of those connections that you're making. I think you just have to hold on to that because we love history. That does not necessarily mean our students do. I think any way you can find to engage them is key, even if it's like pulling in music and making the music connect to like what they're learning. I think is so instrumental. So, but yeah, I think that's the biggest thing.
That's excellent. Really, really wonderful concluding thoughts, everybody. I make a joke sometimes with the students. I don't like history either. I say, if history means all the names and dates and the sort of trying to drink from the fire hose of the facts about the past, I don't like that history. I follow my nose, and that's how I enter the subject, and I say that's how you can do it too. But these are such good points. I think to the students who joined us, thanks for joining. You've got some really wonderful voices here from Lauryn, from Alexander, from James, and from Hannah. Some real experts in the field, but also who know who really have the kind of wisdom and the experience of how you can thrive in this field. So I know how to get a hold of them. You know how to get a hold of me. So if there are follow-up questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. And then we'll be more than happy to discuss this. We'll do another one of these in the spring. I will certainly be emailing our guests again to see if they can make time to join you and share their really, really valuable expertise and experience. This has always been such a wonderful thing for me. And thanks, Lauryn, for sharing your contact information there. I learn a lot, and thanks, Alexander. I learned so much that helps me communicate with our students, so many of whom are excited about teaching. And I love this. I've learned over the years also that bringing in students former students, alumni, and educators who love what they do are the kind of people to bring in because you still have a lot of fire and a lot of passion about what you do. And that's crucial. And it shows, and it's contagious. So thank you all. Thanks, everybody. I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up. You know how to get a hold of me if you have any questions.